Greetings, vinyl people. It's time for another video. This time we're going to do a thread response, and this is to Spirit of Vinyl. I just recently started subscribing to Spirit of Vinyl, and I've been enjoying his posts. He's got some similar taste in music as I do, especially in my formative years. In fact, he's got a formative years video that's definitely worth checking out. But I wanted to do the thread response, and he did 5 questions. And I came home from work one day, and he had a beer, and showed 5 records, and did 5 questions, and it was great stuff. So I figured I can do it. So this is it. 5 questions. First one: album you've owned the longest. One thing you have to realize is that I had an amazing collection of records from the time from 1976, which would have made me 7 years old or so. That was about when I really started collecting. And as an adult, you end up getting rid of a bulk of them because they're just hard to travel with and whatnot. There was a handful of them I kept. I thought that perhaps one day they'd have some value to them, and to this day, I'm glad that I did. Wish there was a couple of more of them that I held on to, but being what it is, what I've held on to the longest, Metal Massacre. This is the very first record from Metal Blade Records, and it was the record that the world first heard Metallica from. They weren't even a band at the time when the record was coming together, and Lars had gotten in touch with Brian Slagel and asked him could he hold a spot for him on the record, and he'd put together a band and record a song. So Slagel agreed to it and saved the very last song, which most people on compilations, a lot of times at that time, they didn't even get to the last song. But a bunch of kids from California put together Metallica, named themselves after a book that was out at the time called Encyclopedia Metallica. I'm sure at some point they kind of regretted holding on to that name, but it is what it is, and they're gigantic and probably the biggest metal band in the world at this point. But a lot of bands came off of this record that did get signed to major labels, and a lot of them had good, solid careers. Just for example, Black and Blue got signed to Geffen and had 4 records. They made 2 of them with Gene Simmons, and their guitar player ended up a 20-plus year career as a guitar player in Kiss, Tommy Thayer. Malice, they put out a couple of records on major label, and they were in a movie with the kid from the Wonder Years called Vice Versa. It's pretty funny. Rat was on this. Tell the World showed up on that. Sarah Thungal, been around for a million years, and of course Metallica. But Metal Massacre from 1982, and this was just homemade, put together on Brian Slagel's mom's dining room table, and made history. And I've had it ever since. Question number 2, oldest record that I own. If you've seen any of my other videos, which you probably haven't, judging by the count, but you can go back and check it out. This was on my on the summer tag, and one of the questions there was your last heavy pull. And for this one, it's oldest record that I own, and it's Red Garland, Red and Bluesville. This was pressed in 1959, and it is the oldest album that I own. It's one of my favorites. Okay, next, most obscure record. Band from Holland, Highway Child. I have loved these guys since I bought this record in 1983, and then one day I realized there's 2 different versions of it. There is the American version and there is the European version, and they have a different track listing. So in my early years, I would put together all the songs on a cassette, and that was what I listened to. So these are in pretty good condition because they didn't get a lot of play, but 2 different labels, 2 different continents of where they were issued, but great stuff. Highway Child. They could have been and should have been the heirs to the throne of Def Leppard, as Def Leppard got a little more electronic as Pyromania happened, these guys were carrying on what Def Leppard did with High and Dry. Great stuff, very. I think one of the things that we really loved about early '80s metal, especially kind of the underground stuff, was how amateur it was. It wasn't polished. It was raw. It was gritty. It was low budget, and it was fucking awesome. Highway Child. Okay, rarest pressing in my collection. Question 4 and question 5 are a little bit similar, so I had a hard time figuring out which one to do which, but it'll all make sense. Rarest pressing, this one is pretty valuable. This is Motley Crue, Too Fast for Love, on leather records. This is one of 900 that were pressed in 1981. Mostly sold out of the backs of the cars and at shows and things like that. This is the record that got them signed to Elektra. Elektra said, that's fine, we'll take those tapes, we're going to remix them. And they pulled out some of the things that were kind of hallmarks to this record. So it's a different listen than the Elektra version of Too Fast for Love. Definitely worth having if you can find it. There's not a lot of them out there. I know that there was a reissue in about '05, and they did an absolute replica of the way this was issued, and they included their first single, the 7-inch for Toast of the Town and Stick to Your Guns. That would be cool to find, but with Motley Crue, I really don't go past Shout at the Devil. After that, they kind of lost me, and at that point, I was heading down a different road. But anyway, yeah, cool stuff. That was the rarest pressing in my collection on vinyl. But I do have another piece that has, it's pretty rare. And this is from 1986 on Uzi Suicide Records. This is a cassette of Guns N' Roses, Live Like a Suicide. This was issued a couple of years later as one of the sides of Lies. And at that point, they'd really lost the plot for me as well. They got signed to Geffen. They put out Appetite for Destruction, became pretty huge. But this was, their calling card. This was a 4-track, a couple of originals and 2 covers. They did a cover of Mama Kin by Aerosmith, and they did a cover of Nice Boys by Rose Tattoo from Australia. So yeah, 4-track cassette, Uzi Suicide Records, Guns N' Roses, Live Like a Suicide. Pretty rare. I've already had a couple of people make some offers on it, but I don't know. For nostalgia purposes, I'm holding on to it. What's the most expensive record in my collection? It could be any of those 2 I just showed. Or it could be this. This is Metallica. This is the 12-inch single for Creeping Death on Music for Nations Records. It's got Creeping Death on side 1. And on side 2, Am I Evil and Blitzkrieg. And you'll see here, this is called Garage Days Revisited. There's a reason I point that out. Because everyone calls this Garage Days Revisited. Look closely. That is Garage Days Revisited. It's a matter of semantics. But, and then they all came out together on Garage Inc. many, many years later. And it's now like a super deluxe 2 or 3 disc thing my son just bought. But this is as far as I went with that. But yeah, this one's pretty cool. This one is, as I say, Music for Nations. Those British ones, the cardboard's a little bit different. This one's on blue see-through vinyl, which was kind of rare back then. I mean, not super rare, but it was rare enough. But this was 1984. And it's just weird seeing Metallica not on Elektra Records. A bulk of their current fan base found them at the Black Album and moved forward. Some of us old timers go back before then, and we had shit like this that you guys are paying a lot of money for. But that is what I think is my most expensive record in my collection. I don't plan on selling it anytime soon. I didn't get into this because records were valuable. I got into this, for the love of it. But it was some cool questions, and I got to pull out some cool records. And I got to show Highway Child on a video. How cool is that? Anyway, so to Spirit of Vinyl, thanks for checking out what we're doing. Once again, I'm John from Wax and Relax Vinyl Listening Room, and we'll see you on the B-side.